A lot of times why we can only need to work out 2 days a week is because we're able to push the intensity a little bit harder as long as you're safe. And you just have to listen to your body, and you have to try to do what your goals are. If your goals are just overall health, all you need is 2 days a week. Everyone I talk to, like, oh, I got to go 6 days a week. I don't go 6 days a week. Why would you need to go 6 days a week? It just comes down to the intensity and then consistency.
Welcome to Henderson HQ. This is the podcast where you get all the stories behind the businesses that make our community tick. Don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Hey, on today's podcast, I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friends and fitness trainers, Ryan Hamilton and Val Hamilton, competitive jiu-jitsu athletes, fighters, bodybuilders. Like, they're doing all the things in the physical space. And we talked about the tough journey that Val came through with bulimia. We talked about why every woman should be more concerned about being strong than looking at the scale. We talked about all of the falsehoods that are out there with a number of times you have to work out, why weightlifting is so important for men and women, and basically just how to make physical fitness fun. So hope you enjoyed the podcast. We also talked about a few things about building your business here in Henderson. So hope you enjoy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves with the Henderson HQ podcast. Today, we're interviewing two friends of mine that have become near and dear to my heart. Ryan and Val are, I think we're going to name this episode like the fittest couple in Henderson, because I think they are. And Ryan is the owner of New Era Fitness, which he's become my personal trainer over the last year and helped me replace like 10 pounds of fat with 10 pounds of muscle, which makes me feel good about myself. And then Val is an awesome jiu-jitsu practitioner, is the coach for both of my children, Gabriel and Alina. So she teaches the little kids and some of the older kids. And so I think we see the two of you probably like once every 12 hours or something like that. Ryan's also a black belt jiu-jitsu, so he kicked my ass every morning, and then they kick my kids' ass in the afternoon, and then I work out with them and Ryan kicks my ass again. So just wanted to have you two on to talk about the business of being in fitness, because I think there's a million ways to make money in fitness. But why don't we start there? Like, how did you two decide that like your life work was going to be in health and fitness? Oh, yeah. And by the way, Val's twice as loud as Ryan. So I could have just invited Val. Go for it.
I got into MMA and jiu-jitsu when I was 16. So, 5 years down the road training, I'm like 21, 22, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to start doing with my life? And just kind of committed to jiu-jitsu and knew I always kind of wanted to work with kids too. So teaching kids class was a way to make money with it and still do what I loved. So, yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to my wife who runs Apogee Henderson, which is a private school here in town. Val also does jiu-jitsu classes there a couple times a week, and I think the girls are getting into it even more than the guys because they have like a role model for that. So, Ryan, what's your background? Because, well, I know your background, but you have a pretty crazy story about why you got into fitness and lifting weights.
Yeah, when I was 16, 17 years old, I had, lower back issues. I'm a skinny kid and I didn't understand. I played sports. It made no sense why my lower back hurt so much. I'd be going to chiropractors, have no success. And then I just remember one day watching a basketball game, it just completely locking up on me. And I was like, I got to fix this, because what's going to happen 10 years down the road if I'm 17 and I already feel this bad?
So at 17, why did you have so much back pain?
No, as far as I have kyphosis and scoliosis. So kyphosis is a hunchback and scoliosis is that little twist in the spine. So my spine's all just jacked up as can be. And so I had no idea what was wrong with it. No one could really tell me. And so I just happened to hop into the weight room and started just doing my best just to get stronger everywhere. And it just happened to stance that my back pain started going away. I didn't know why. I did a lot of things wrong, but then it just slowly got more and more away, and then I just would wake up one day and I didn't have lower back pain. I was like, this is pretty.
You kind of gloss over the fact that you had, what is it called? Scoliosis and
kyphosis.
So you are a hunchback.
Yes, completely.
And also your spine makes like an S.
Yeah, basically.
And did your parents know this when you were young? Like, was this a no problem or?
Well, apparently, as far as I know, my grandmother had it. On my mother's side. My mom didn't, because she was in drill team at the time and they corrected her posture. And I could look back at pictures when I was a kid and I just had terrible posture. And I could just see kids in this generation with phones following in the same footsteps that I had. I didn't even have a phone. I just had terrible posture, And that's what it started. It started when I was like, a kid from 6, 7, 8 years old and never standing up straight for whatever reason. And then slowly just twisted and got more hunched. And yeah, so I should be like an inch or two taller, but I'm not,
Yeah, Ryan and I have an ongoing debate whether he's 5'10" or whether he's 5'8". So, but I guess if you have a hunchback, there's a good reason for that.
Yeah.
So you were in like crippling pain at 16 years old.
Yeah.
And did they recommend surgery? Were you seeing a doctor, or were you just like, oh, I'll start lifting weights and see if this fixes the
I
problem?
had a chiropractor once a week, a couple times a month, and he was just saying that there's not much they can do. It's just my spine's twisted, and there's surgery, but all surgery is putting a metal rod in my spine. And once you put a metal rod in your spine, you ain't moving, you ain't doing anything. And so I have no idea what brought me into lifting weights other than just being 17 and just wanting to be bigger, stronger, having testosterone going through me. And so I just started lifting weights, and it just happened that my lower back pain was just going away because I was doing so much. I wanted to make sure I was even. So I did upper and lower body. I didn't, just do upper body. And then the doing of the lower body was strengthening everything. I don't know how it happened. I do now, but at the time I had no idea that it was responsible for, curing my lower back pain. And ever since then, when I figured that out, I just spent, years and years figuring out why that worked and then how I can, implement that to everyone else. Because as far as lower back pain concerns, it happens to everybody,
So when I first started seeing you, I sit at a computer 8 hours a day, and then I'm hunched over in jiu-jitsu, and then I'm always on my phone. So it's like I probably have 16, 17 hours a day where I'm like hunched over, which is horrible. And I was telling you when I first started, I was like, man, I got this shoulder pain, and we were trying to do like a very simple exercise, like pressing exercise. My elbow was like in excruciating pain. I really thought I was on the path to like, oh, the right side of my body, there must be a pinched nerve or whatever bro science I was coming up with. And I'm like, I'm going to have surgery one day. And you're like, trust me, just give me 6 months. We'll pull like your whole shoulders back and it'll fix the pain. So I guess my question would be, do you think there's a lot of people that are in unnecessary pain that are probably going down that path of needing surgery, and they probably just need to even out their body with some fitness?
100%. I've had multiple cases of like that. I've had people where their shoulder was almost touching their neck and they just thought it was normal life. I had a girl just last year who was getting ready for a wedding whose shoulder was so rolled forward. They recommended surgery to pull it back, to get everything, to get her neck alignment right. Luckily I was able to work with her a little bit and it pulled everything back and she's fine now. Yeah, I've heard it all the time. We just get so one way, day after day, hour after hour. We don't realize it. It's not just like, we wake up one day and we're all of a sudden in pain. We don't really have the pain signals until it's, too late. It's so far gone that you have to completely go in the reverse. For me, upper body wise, to realize that it was because my pec got torn, and to recover, I had to let it pull forward, and it just led to incredible neck pain. And so I had horrible neck and shoulder blade pain. And then as I was rehabbing that and pulling that back and pulling my whole posture back to normal, all of a sudden everything else started feeling better. My neck pain went away, my shoulder blade pain went away. And then when I stopped, completely focusing on rehab, all of a sudden I would get rolled forward a little bit more, and I was then, connecting the dots. So I was like, okay, we're not posturally strong. We don't work these posture muscles. We're so rolled forward in daily life and everything that we do. And if you walk around and look at the normal person, their heads are down, whether it's in their phone or just looking down, you're going to see hunches in necks. We're going to see rolled shoulders. We're going to just see terrible posture everywhere we go. And that leads to pain. Eventually, if you roll forward enough, your back has to give. Something has to give. You can sit there and just deal with it. And we're really good at that as humans, of just sitting there and dealing with pain. Or we can be proactive with it and try to, help yourself and get back to normal, and strength and be stronger.
Val, I tell this story all the time because I think it's a funny story, that when I first started working out with Ryan, he had me using like one little plastic band, which is like pretty degrading as a guy who like was in the army and I used to box and now I do jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, I get this one little plastic band for an hour a day. And it was degrading to begin with, but then it was really degrading when I showed up early one day and you were in there with some belt around your waist doing like 500 pounds of like deadlifts or squats or something. I don't know, that machine that you have. How are you so strong? How long have you been lifting weights? Because everybody comments on it, and I know it's kind of like a trope now anytime somebody meets you. So like, how long have you been like just lifting with a purpose to get stronger?
Well, actually, when Ryan and I started dating, that's how we actually met, was I wanted to start lifting. I had no clue where to start. And so he offered to start lifting with me. He's been my trainer we've been together for 10 years. So for about 10 years now. And yeah, we just slowly start getting more knowledge, and we're slowly able to start like figuring out where I need to build muscle, especially like as a girl. I was a very small girl, and I was doing MMA, so I was cutting to 115, but they weren't really cuts for me. So I was like, all right, well, I don't want to just like eat a bunch, get fat, so I like cut weight that way. I want to like get strong and get muscle on me. So yeah, that was always my purpose, was to like make myself bigger, stronger, support my joints, protect myself, and like my goal still is to like gain weight, so to speak. So like a lot of people I think get scared because they're like, oh, like I'm gonna get big and bulky, and it's because like the number on the scale might increase when you're getting stronger, but like it's because you're adding muscle, and like it's all good things, you know.
So what are some other misconceptions that women might have about starting to like lift weights, right? Because I know even just talking to my wife, and we've had a lot of conversations about this because of Ryan, it's like there is that fear of like, well, I don't want to get too muscular, which by the way would be a long way away for most women, or they're scared of the scale. What are like other misconceptions about why women should be lifting weights, or why they don't start? Or, you know, because when I think of like women workout, I think of like Taekwondo and Pilates and stuff where it's maybe like more stretching and mobility, but not a lot of like power and strength. And then the first time I did jiu-jitsu with you, I was like, dude, this is like having an orangutan on my back. You're so fucking strong. Excuse my language. So what are some misconceptions about women like starting weightlifting and sticking with it?
Yeah, I think like women get worried. Like the one big thing is they're gonna get bulky, and it's like, you know, even if we put aside like your body can look how you want, like bulky is an interesting word to use, but for like muscular. But like it's also like it takes a very long time to get to that point. You're not gonna like do curls with like 5-pound weights and all of a sudden you're gonna have like giant biceps. Like people work a long time to get there. So like you're not gonna get bulky by like starting strength training. And I also don't think like women realize how much they're already like lifting on a day. If you're a mom, like you're carrying a 30-pound kid, like walking through the store while carrying your purse and your groceries while like pushing a cart. Like that's a sled push right there while carrying weight. Like you're already doing these movements. So like doing them safely in a gym is going to help protect you in everyday life.
Yeah.
So I think women definitely need it. And I definitely think women don't realize either how important it is for like hormone balance too. Like working out, exerting yourself is really good for balancing out your hormones, like your cortisol levels. It's going to help you like stress relief throughout your day, like doing something really exertive. Yeah, you're going to be tired for like that hour, but I promise you your whole rest of your day is going to be like so much easier dealing with everything. I think, and then like lower body movements, like if you're a mom, if you're a woman, it's uncomfortable sometimes for men to bring it up when it's lifting, but it's really good for like your pelvic muscles and your pelvic floor. And it's going to keep you from having to get surgery like 20 years down the road.
Yeah. You know, I had a processor that worked for me, a lovely girl named Sarah, and she was coming to the tail end of like her second or third kid was a toddler, and crippling shoulder pain, like just one of the hardest working girls I ever knew. And she would call us and she'd be like, I have to take an hour off. I literally cannot raise my arm to type right now. And typing is not a particularly physically stressed. And she couldn't figure it out, and her doctor couldn't figure it out and whatnot. I'm like, Sarah, you're like 100 pounds soaking wet, and you've probably been carrying 2 or 3 kids for 5 years with one arm, right? Like, let me guess, you always carry your kids with your right arm. She's like, oh yeah, I'm basically doing like a one-armed curl with like a third of my body weight all the time. And so, you know, had she been lifting or been a little bit like core strong prior to becoming a mom, or during those years when she was a mom, probably wouldn't have had crippling pain in her right shoulder.
I mean, 90% of my clients are women, normal housewives. And so the things that I've seen, and not even like throughout like my entire time, I've been in fitness for 15 years. I've watched women 9 months pregnant hit personal bests on deadlifts, you know, watching them deadlift 300, 400 pounds. And pregnant, 9 months pregnant. They gave
the
birth.
bar goes like right under their fake old pregnant belly. That's like when they know they stop.
Yeah.
Like such. Okay.
With pregnancy, I mean, you obviously have to be careful, you know, for sure. But other than running, because that takes a lot of blood flow, a lot of oxygen, women can still lift weights pregnant and that far into pregnancy. I watched a girl go through an hour-long workout, a Spartan obstacle course workout that I put for the class. I altered it a little bit for her so she didn't have to run as much. Killed that workout, literally gave birth the next day. And then went back into the gym under a week. We kicked her out because we're like, you just gave birth a week ago. She came back again the next day, and we finally let her get back to work. Because a lot of times when you are in shape, you bounce back so much better. Like, the science has shown it. I've physically seen it with multiple different women. They give birth their first kid at young 20s. They don't do anything fitness wise. And they say that their postpartum, their comeback from that is months and months and months. And then I watched their second birth, and they've gotten into fitness. They're closer to 30 at this point. They give birth and they bounce back. The lady was back within a week. Like, her first kid, she said it took her months, and she had horrible postpartum. The next kid dealt with it, and she was back. And it's because you just take so much care of yourself physically that it also helps hormonally. I'm obviously not a woman. I can't speak for what they go through with all that stuff, but just physically watching it, I've watched women who I train now who are some of the strongest people that I've seen. The people that I train, they're training stronger than most guys. And I have to tell every woman that comes into the gym that you are a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. Stop picking up 10-pound weights. We are going to lift some heavy weight. I can't get you to look like me. I'm 200 plus pounds. I can't get her to be my size. She lifts as heavy as possible. We always lift heavy, and she is not near my size. And it's because it's all about food intake. It's not about lifting. Lifting is just to get her to muscle, to get her toned, to get her stronger. And that's where I get across to women. I can't make you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's never your goal. It's like, if I have you lift heavy, it's to make sure that we're stronger, our joints, and the biggest thing is our bones. The bone health.
Talk about the bone health a little bit, because I think this is something that women don't think of when it comes to lifting weights.
My word, if I can get anything into women that with lifting, the aesthetic look is great for sure. That's why we want to lift weights, but it's bone health, because if we don't put stress on the bones, every time, for example, you do a curl, that's putting, stress on the muscles, putting stress on the tendon, and that's putting stress on the bone. And so it has to hang on. So it's pushing on the bone to be stronger and hang on to it. So you can imagine, if I don't do anything for 20 years, there's been no stress on the bone gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And then all of a sudden it just takes me to clipped it, and then it's broken. But if you all of a sudden for the last 20 years have been putting stress on the bone, it's stronger, and now we can absorb these hits. The best example that I can give is I had a 72-year-old client. His wife was 70. He was 6'1", 200 pounds. She was like 5 foot, 100 pounds. He'd been lifting weights with me for a year. She didn't. They were walking. They had happened to fall. They both extended their hands out. She broke her wrist in like 3 different areas, and he just had a bruise on his hand. No breaks. And it's because a lot of it has to do with his bones were just a little bit stronger. They can absorb that impact because of that strength training, And that's why I try to get across, especially to women, is we don't want to have, the stereotypical 80-year-old broken hip. And how do we prevent that? We can do our best by, lifting weights. Calcium and all that stuff can help. It's more like a Band-Aid. Lifting weights has been the thing that's been proven to strengthen the bones. And they've been doing science with 70-year-old women, throwing them into powerlifting. Like, hey, lift some weights. And they've shown real progress. They stand taller. They move better. I'll preach it, to the day I die, that age at some point is just a number, because you can age gracefully, and age, there's a quality of life that, you can have if you just be strong. It's not lifting. It's not being at the gym 24 hours a day. That's what I'm saying. You don't need that time. All you need to do is just dedicate a little bit of time to yourself and your health, and you will make it years and years down the road so much better.
So it's so funny. When we first started working out, we were just chatting because we have an hour, and I'm just crying. No, I'm just kidding. It's been a great workout. You were mentioning I work with 90% women. About half of them just want to be toned and have a bigger butt, and half of them are older, and we're trying to offset the reality of osteoporosis, right? So can lifting weights and that stress on the bone, can it slow down the effects of osteoporosis? Because I know just from talking to some medical guys, I was actually talking to Justin, a doctor at our gym today. He's like, oh yeah, man, once you fall and break your hip, it's a downward spiral from there, because then other parts of the body start to shut down and it just doesn't recover. So can lifting the weights offset that degradation of bone quality for women?
From what they've seen, from what the science has shown, that is our best bet. They're starting to do more and more research, but especially the data when I was in school that they're showing in particular with women and menopause is we watch both men and women, our calcium levels after we hit 30 start to go down. And so that's why we need to start taking calcium supplements. But as soon as women hit menopause, it just drops off a cliff and they almost no longer absorb calcium correctly. So that's where they lead to a lot thinnering of bones quicker. So that is what they've been showing to try to combat that is strength training, because we're putting stress on the bone. And that has been shown to make incredible progress, as far as like completely reversing it. I can't speak to that, but I think it's the best thing. As far as we know, as far as I know right now, science has shown that is the best way to start preventing that, or at least, pushing it off later and later into life.
Yeah. So Val, I want to compare and contrast like the athlete workout, right? Because like you're a competitive jiu-jitsu practitioner, still probably looking for an MMA fight, though every girl is apparently scared to fight you. And I know like fitness is front and center for you. So your experience is going to be different than mine, right? Like lifting weights a couple of times a week. So walk us through like what your actual workout schedule looks like, how many times you're working out. And then I want to contrast that with what Ryan has to say for just like your average dude like me that has an office job, how often you actually have to be lifting. So what's the pro version of working out with Ryan?
Let's see. We do probably especially if I have a tournament coming up, we'll do 3 to 4 days a week of strength and conditioning. And then it varies, because I'm an athlete, sometimes instead of just doing heavy squats for reps, controlling the weights like he would have his housewife clients do because they're protecting themselves, I might do heavy squats for explosive time or something, or hold static and then an explosive up. So I do a lot of similar movements as the everyday person would be, because again, we're protecting my joints, we're trying to put muscle on me. We just vary it a little bit. And then all of my strength and conditioning is to supplement my jiu-jitsu, to protect me, to keep me healthy so that I can cut weight. So I do about 2 jiu-jitsu practices a day. So my strength and conditioning is
So you're doing 12, 13, 14 jiu-jitsu workouts a week and then lifting weights another 3 or 4 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many calories do you have to eat? Because you're what? All joking aside, you're 535 pounds, something like that?
5'3", 125.
Okay. And how many calories a day do you have to eat to maintain that much workout?
Right now it's 3,000 to 3,500.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the pro version. If you're watching this and you want to be a pro athlete, do what Val does. But what I was most shocked with Ryan, and I'm joking about crying at the workouts, because I don't think, and this is weird to say, I don't think we've done a single workout where I've been excruciatingly sore the next day.
Yeah.
I've never had this experience where I'm oh, I can't stand up off the toilet. My legs are wrecked. So for just your average, I just want to work on getting a little bit healthier. Talk about how much time needs to be spent in the gym lifting weights.
Honestly, when it comes to weight training, 2 days is all you need. If you enjoy it, then go 4. But
I hate it, by the way. So
two. That's it. That's the science has shown. Again, unless you're a bodybuilder, doing for specific aesthetics, which again, 99% of us aren't. 99% of us at the gym are just trying to obviously look better, but just be healthier. You don't need to be putting in the time that they put in. And even science has been showing that they need to put in a little less time than they are. So it has a lot to do with less so much to do with the amount of time spent in the gym, and the intensity that's spent in the gym is more important. And so again, we take an example, women and lifting light, if someone comes in and they lift, something for 15 reps and they just yeah, I think that's good. We weren't pushing the intensity hard enough. And that's the problem. And so a lot of times why we can only need to work out 2 days a week is because we're able to push the intensity a little bit harder, as long as you're safe. And then, so when it comes down to it, we don't need to go for 6 days a week. I don't lift 6 days a week. I go 2 days on, 1 day off. And then if I feel a little beat up, then I take another day off. And you just have to listen to your body, and you have to try to do what your goals are. If your goals are just overall health, all you need is 2 days a week. It's a full body workout, stimulate your muscles enough and you're good to go. If you have time or you enjoy it and you want to do stuff on the outside, great. And that can get you to your results faster, but it's never needed. I tell people, like, I see you twice a week at the most. The most I see people is 2 if they're really feeling feisty 3 days a week, but
Right.
that's really it. I don't see people 4 or 5 days a week. And when I see them those 2, 3 days, that's all they do. If they happen to do cardio on the outside, great, but it's never needed. If it's whatever works in your schedule, it's such less is needed that people think. Everyone I talk to, like, oh, I got to go 6 days a week. I was like, I don't go 6 days a week. Why would you need to go 6 days a week?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm just telling you what I do to, you can tell me what you want to look like. And it's not going to vary too far off from what I do and what I have you do. It just comes down to the intensity and then consistency. And when fortunately with fitness, when we don't see the results in the first 2 weeks, we get frustrated and we fall off,
Well, I think especially if people believe that old, fitness magazine of like, oh, I got to work out 6 days a week and I got to alternate between upper body and lower body.
At 5 a.m.
Exactly. And I got to alternate between the back and the front. And then it's like, you just have analysis paralysis. You're like, what the hell am I supposed to do? So when we started working out, I was like, oh, dude, is this going to cost me an arm and a leg? And you were like, no, we need to see each other twice a week, max. And I had hit that point where I was doing jiu-jitsu like 5 days a week, but I'm finally good enough where I know where I can be lazy. So I'm not like totally exerting myself 100% of the time. And I reached this plateau where I'm like, okay, unless I really want to dial in my diet, which we'll get to in a minute, I need to add something else. And my wife even commented on the other day, she's like, dude, whatever Ryan's doing is working. Cause like your shoulders are getting larger, your arms are getting bigger, your stomach's looking small. Like you just look aesthetically better. And then I went and did a DEXA scan and the guy was like, man, your bone density is like off the chart. I'm like, oh, cool. I've been lifting with this guy for like a year. I've always done like some type of combat sport, boxing or jiu-jitsu. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, you're, you still have some fat to lose. There was a little bit of red on the scan that he's like, I'd really like to see you lose 2 pounds of visceral fat around your belly. He's like, but your bone density, you're great. You're never going to fall and break your hip. And I'm like, awesome. Okay. We're doing something right. So, why do you think there is that perception that people are like, oh, well, I get started, I got to work out 5 days a week and I have to have this dialed in program. It's like, no, you can get a lot of results in 2 days a week.
A lot of it comes down to the first thing that I was introduced to when it came to weightlifting, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. When everyone thinks about weightlifting, they think about being a bodybuilder and they think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, for the most part. Now the generation might change, but that's what I thought about. My first book that I read when it came to weightlifting was an Arnold Schwarzenegger book.
Pumping Iron, right?
I don't know if it was that. It was just it showed his entire workout. But when he worked out twice a day, 3 hours each session, 2 to 3 hours. And so he would do, it was like chest in the morning, back, and then he would come back and do legs and then arms the next day. And so it's like he did that and he did 5 sets of every movement for 10 plus reps. And so he was doing 25 sets of body part. And so that's why he was spending 2-3 hours in the gym.
Well, it's also why he was Mr. Universe, right?
For sure. Again,
if you're trying to be that level, yes, you have to put in that time.
And, that's what it comes down to. And when I tell people it's, unless you're trying to look for that, and again, majority of us aren't, you don't need to be doing that stuff. But that was all we were introduced to. And so now with science, luckily, and research and all these studies coming out in the last few years, they've found that it's, even in bodybuilding, it's so much less about the amount of volume done and then more about the intensity and then the ability to recover. And so a lot of times with our combat athletes or just people that are doing too much cardio on the outside, you're going to risk also burning muscle. And so you have to run into that as well when you talk about diet more. When people go, oh, I want to lose fat, I want to lose weight, and I'm just going to cut calories. And, I go, well, we're going to burn muscle at that point too, and we don't want to do that. And so when you can overwork yourself, by doing too much. And so a lot of times I tell people, you don't need to go to the gym 6 days a week. We don't need to be doing 5 sessions of lifting and 20 sessions of cardio or whatever people do. I go, there's a minimum I need you to hit. But there's also a maximum I need you to not go over, because then we're going to burn muscle. And if we burn muscle, what's the point? Because then you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Most important question, Val. Does he really eat candy every day?
Every single day.
God, that pisses
multiple times a day.
That pisses me off so much.
Even when he's cutting weight, he still has candy.
because we've talked about this, and I'm like, the hardest thing for me is dialing in the diet, right? Like I measure Oreo consumption in rows. Like I don't know how anybody has like 2 Oreos and then quits. It just doesn't even seem plausible to me. And so when you told me like, no, Ryan will help you with the protein stuff and help you get the diet on track, but he eats candy every day. I'm like, no, that's a marketing tool. He doesn't actually eat candy every day. Do you eat candy every day?
Every single day.
Oh my God. Trust me, if you were in studio, if you're listening to this on the on like iTunes or Spotify, you would not believe that these two people eat candy every day. So how do you work that in to where you're like, okay, I can have some fun, but just can't overdo it? Like that doesn't even register in my brain.
Again, like I'm on the extreme end. I have a big amount of calories I have to hit. So I almost use junk food sometimes to hit those numbers. But it's also because I'm hitting my protein. As long as I'm hitting my protein, I'm focusing on what I need to get, then everything else is just spiller for the numbers.
Yeah. Ryan, we've talked about this a lot. Can you talk about like how much protein and why that's so important?
Yeah. I mean, we have the base number, and it comes down to about 1 gram per pound of body weight is what we need. You can vary up and down a little bit per person and for what your actual goals are. But that's your basic what you're looking to do. And the main reason behind that, and it has less to do with like building muscle and more about just preserving your muscle, And so when we don't hit our protein goals and we work out as hard as we can and we're not seeing results, it's because we're not building muscle and we're shooting ourselves in the foot because you're not giving your body the resources that it needs to build that muscle. And that's what's responsible for holding on to that muscle and building it is protein. Carbs are also very helpful for just being able to go through the workouts. Everyone knows when they first start dieting, they start to feel fatigued, their workouts start crashing. And a lot of that has to do with because we're just cutting too much.
So Ryan, I read online that I'm supposed to do all keto and eat no carbs whatsoever.
And you can't eat after 6 p.m. or those are double the calories.
Yeah, you have to drink this time. You have to do that. It's daunting, right? So when we started working together, after about 5 months, I finally started tracking my food with the sole goal of trying to get in, because I'm about 200, 210 pounds, depending on the day, trying to get in 200 grams of protein, which is way harder than you would think.
Yeah.
Why?
You don't realize your protein is also responsible for keeping you full. And so when you eat it, all of a sudden you're full and then there's still a lot more to go. 4 ounce, for the basic measurements, obviously if you have a scale, it's better, but I always say just use your fist, and the outline of your fist is about 3 to 4 ounces. And that's only about, 18 to 22 grams. And so if you need 200, you got to imagine you need, 10 of those, and that's a lot of food right there. And so the first thing that people do when they first start, quote unquote diet, and I hate the word, is when they start training with me is, when I first have them hit their protein goals, all they talk about is, I'm full, like I'm eating a lot. Are you sure this is a diet? And I go, 100% it's a diet. We're just correctly turning your calories what we should be doing. And again, it's not all protein. It seems like you're almost completely keto when you first start because that's all your focus is protein. But that in turn helps lower your calories. That's why keto and carnivore works initially, because yes, you're full finally. Yes, your muscles are finally getting fed with protein, but carbs are still helpful and they're responsible for making your workouts go better, for making your whole life, your energy levels better. And so you can't just cut carbs out and you lose weight initially. It's like, yeah, that's great. But weight loss and fat loss are, two different things. Weight loss incorporates muscle, fat, and water. Fat loss is just fat loss. And, everyone I've talked to in fitness, they want fat loss, when we don't want to lose just weight. We want to lose, fat specifically because we have excess body fat. And so when we just cut carbs out and you see this big drop in the scale, and you're like, oh, it's working. That's not what's happening. You didn't just drop 10 pounds overnight. I promise, it's not how it works. The scale might say it, but it has so much more to do with water loss and stuff like that. And so all I do is when I talk to people, when they first start eating, I go, can you eat like this, in a month? In 5 months, can you keep eating like this? For a year from now, can you see yourself eating like this? And they go, no. I was like, then why are you starting now? If I can show you the correct way to still enjoy life. Because at the end of the day, it's still life. You got to enjoy life. we're not trying to be bodybuilders. We're not, we don't need to have single percentage body fat. We just need to be healthy. You can enjoy life and enjoy food. When she has to cut down her body fat or her weight for competitions, or when I have to for competitions, that's a completely different animal. But we're still going to enjoy certain things. Like when I did a bodybuilding show, I got into single percentage body fat the week of my competition. I was still having candy. Like I made sure to always have that as part of my diet, because that's my treat to myself. But I can figure out how to put it in there, and that's all you have to do.
It's crazy. When we first started, we were doing the math on your whiteboard, and you're like, all right, man, if you want to lose like a pound a week, you got to eat about 2,500 calories. And when I switched from eating more carbs and fats and sugars and shit to protein, I'd get to like 1,500 calories. And I'd be like, how am I going to eat any more food? Because it's like, we don't have to have a lot of calories. We just have to have the right calories. And I have found I can't hit the protein goal unless I drink like 2 protein shakes a day. Like it would be impossible for me to consume that much steak and chicken. And there was one day I called you. I'm like, man, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm fatigued. And you're like, yeah, dummy. You did like 4 workouts in the last 48 hours. Go have a piece of pizza or a beer or something with some carbs in it, because like you can't be that strict, which I appreciate it, because then I had a piece of pizza and a beer. But where do you fall, Val, as far as like managing the weight and the calories and stuff, and then being able to be like, all right, for your very specific competition goals, you can cut 5 or 10 pounds, I'm guessing, pretty quickly, easily for competition? Where like, what's your like weight tolerance for being like, okay, I can still feel physically good on a daily basis, but then I'm within like striking distance of losing weight for a competition?
I think like the nice thing is I'm starting at a very good point. So I'm starting with quite a bit of muscle on me. Again, I have a huge amount of calories, and I think that's what like people also like don't realize is when you start doing this right, and like if you're like me and you're trying to put on weight or you're getting more muscle, you get to like increase your calories a little bit because your body needs more fuel, and it's not like, oh, it's all going to go straight to my stomach. It's all going to my body, my muscles. And so when I cut, like some people are starting at like 1,200 calories and they're like ending at 800. Since I'm starting at 35, my like last week, I still think I have like 1,200 calories, so I still have
We're 2,000.
2,000, and I was cutting to 115. I had day of weigh-ins, I was still having 2,000 calories, so like setting myself up in a good spot like made it so like, it's funny because I complained. I was like, oh no, I'm down to like 2,500 calories, and I'm still having like a chocolate bar. I'm still having like yesterday, but I want 2 chocolate bars or something, But yeah, being able to like start in a good spot, taking care of my body, making sure it's like fueled and fed, and I'm not depriving it to start, makes the cut so much easier. And I've done same day 115 when I did Medusa, and that was literally like I weighed in the morning at 10 o'clock, competed at like 4 o'clock.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Talk a little bit maybe to the woman that's like never really worked out, and maybe they're like, I had an ex-girlfriend that called herself skinny fat. She's like, well, I'm skinny, but I'm not like in shape, right? And she would just like moderate her calories, and she was a little vain, and so she wanted to stay skinny. That's fine. But she wasn't like into fitness at all. So maybe talk to the girl that's like intimidated, maybe they have had the first or second kid. Like Ryan's the least intimidating person I know until you get him on the mat. He's like super calm. You guys have the whole gym built out in your garage, which I don't know how many dollars worth of gym equipment you guys have in your garage, but I'm guessing it's a whole lot.
Never mind.
There's the frugal wife coming out. We're like, do we have to buy that sled? But talk a little bit about like to the woman that's like maybe intimidated to get started, right? Because like you walk into Ryan's gym and there is a lot of heavy weights in there. That was a little bit intimidating for me as a guy who had lifted weights before. I imagine for a girl that might be either a little bit of a turnoff or just it might be scary.
Yeah. So I guess to be very honest, even though I was, an athlete trying to lift and, so to speak, trying to get like bigger and stronger. For the first like 3 years of like my fitness, my sports journey, 4 years, I was actually bulimic. So I had an eating disorder. So like as much as I was trying to lift and be a good athlete and like get stronger, I was also like ruining my body by not taking care of my diet. And it's because I was so focused on like the number on the scale and like being tiny. And I was just like, oh, if that number goes up, that means I'm getting bigger. Getting bigger is bad, And so I think like once I actually started like okay, I'm going to eat to fuel my body, and I want my body to be able to do cool things for me. I'm not just going to focus on how it looks. I want it to do good things for me and take care of myself. And then I started getting into like lifting seriously and like taking care of my diet seriously. And then it just like, it made me feel so strong because again, like we don't think of ourselves as women like, yeah, we all know like women can carry 3 kids and we can push the stroller up the hill and we can like take care of that because that's what like moms and women do. But I don't think we think of ourselves as like going into a gym and lifting weight and moving it. And that makes me feel good and that makes me feel strong. And so it kind of just like releases, I think, like a primal feeling maybe, or like a powerful feeling that I think women don't realize they have until they actually get in there. And like, they're a lot stronger than they think. Like Ryan said, he's had women like who've started out as clients and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to build this, but I want to stay tiny. I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to get big. And he puts a 300-pound hip thrust bar in front of them. And they're like, there's no way. And then they're repping out 8 reps. And they're like, no way, I did that? And you see it. You see like the floodgates come out. And he's like, yeah, we're going to put more on. And they're like, okay, like maybe I could do it. And they do it for 5 more reps. And you just see like how powerful they feel. And they're like, oh, I can do these things. Like, why am I doubting myself? I'm strong in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, it's, the, early or late, 90s, early 2000s when it was just skinny, models and everything. And that's how women were starting to shape after. And that was just pure cardio. There was no muscle tone. We can look back at we watch music videos from the, early 2000s. And you just see there's just no muscle tone. They're just thin. And that's where we run into bone issues later on in life, is because they're just moving and they're burning calories to stay thin, but they're not putting any stress on the bones. So we're not building the bones, but we're also not feeding our body correctly. So the bones are also getting fed correctly, with protein, with all the strength training. And so it just goes hand in hand. When you want to be in best shape and you want to age the best you can, strength training is the best way to age gracefully and to feel better. Because again, there's, doctors and our science, they can make us live long. You've said it, you can live to 80, doctor can make you live to 80, but what's the quality at that point? I want to make sure I've seen people at, bodybuilding shows, but just in competitions, 70, 80 years old, just really changing my mind of what aging is. And age can just be a number at some point. If you treat your body right, things can happen for sure, but let's give ourselves the best percentage to, age gracefully.
Yeah.
That's how I try to do it.
One thing that really helped me like focus on this, I go to a cardiologist down at UCLA because there's not a guy in my family that has made it past 70. And I'm trying to buck that trend. There's a lot of reasons for that. Obesity and smoking cigarettes and just not taking care of themselves. And my cardiologist said the same thing. He's like, with modern science, he's like, I'll get you to 80. You might be taking 17 different pills and having, quadruple bypass. He's like, unless you have like a widowmaker heart attack, we'll get you to 80. Sure. But your quality of life from about 55 to 80 is going to depend solely on your diet and whether you stay physically active. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I don't want to make it to 80 and be in a walker pissing my pants. That doesn't sound fun at all.
I mean, again, the scariest stat that I've seen is that the average American consumes 3,200 calories a day and moves less than 20 minutes. And so we're just not moving at all, as much as we need to correct what we eat. And the funniest one that I always hear, it's when they talk about when they're kids. They're like, man, when I was a kid, I could eat whatever I wanted. And I never gained a pound. And I go, well, as a kid, what else did you do? You were active as a kid, especially pre-electronics, we didn't have those electronics. So we were out running around. We're at parks. We're just burning calories. And so in the same line, when you're out running around burning calories, what else are you not doing? You're not eating. And so when you're a kid, when you think about it, how often did you actually eat? Like, I don't really remember eating breakfast every day. Maybe I had some cereal. I maybe had lunch at school, but we're playing basketball or whatever, especially in elementary school. And then after school, I'm playing a sport or going and hanging out with friends. So I had to have dinner. So I didn't really snack at all. So like I had maybe, 1,000 calories. Yeah. And I burned, 2,000 of them. And so it's like, yeah, no wonder you couldn't gain weight as a kid. But as an adult, we've just completely flipped that. We just don't move and we just eat a lot.
It's so funny. There's been a few days where like at Karina's school, Apogee, we really prioritize fitness, right? So it's like there's not just one 20-minute lunch break. They're doing lunch and then they're doing like a jiu-jitsu workout with you. Then they're super active. And then we go to 2 hours of jiu-jitsu. And then there's been nights where right after 2 hours of jiu-jitsu, Alina has an hour and a half of soccer and Gabriel's running around the field playing football. So it's like they've gotten in like 5 or 6 hours of working out. And then we go to eat dinner and I'm like, what'd you guys have for breakfast? They're like, nothing. And then I'm like, I'm cleaning out their lunch pail and it's like maybe they ate 10% of their food. And they're like, I'm like, what did you eat for lunch? They're like, nothing. And I'm like, how did you burn probably 4,000 calories a day and eat nothing? It's like, oh, that's why Gabriel's 9 years old and just thin as a rail, right? It's like,
100%.
that's the way it works. So talk a little bit, switching gears to people that are watching this that are maybe business owners or they're thinking about going to fitness. Talk about the business of running a fitness business, right? Because yeah, great. You have all this knowledge. You've got 15 years of practical experience. You've got certifications. You've got all this stuff. But until you have a client, great. It's just an idea. It's not really a business.
Yeah.
So how have you guys, other than you being advertisements for yourself and how you look physically, how have you guys built like the business?
Basically, when we first moved out here, we were both competing. Then
How long ago did you just move to Henderson?
5 years ago now. Yeah. I had gotten a job in another gym on the other side of town. I've worked at gyms my whole life. I had known that I was going to get into strength conditioning for the rest of my life. I knew I was going to eventually own that. I was just into jiu-jitsu and fighting and stuff like that at the time. So when we're out here and I was starting to stop competing as much, I was like, all right, so now I need to figure out how I want to run this. Do I want to open my own spot or just keep working at gyms? And then I just happened to know a couple people at that, and they're like, if you open a spot, well, we'll follow, and word of mouth just traveled, and so I just happened to, leap of faith really more than anything is when I opened it, and because I didn't want to stress too much with having to force it and the advertisement and the marketing. I was like, if I could just do it at home, that just takes the ease of it. I can charge a lot less for the people, and because my whole goal has always been just to help people more than anything. Like as far as financially, I don't do a good job financially at it. I'm not the greatest person in business or to talk because I'll give a lot as much as I can for free. And because the main thing is, especially with the younger generation, like I have clients bring their kids in and that's fine with me because if I can give the younger generation a goal, especially to lift weights and to be healthy, that's huge for me, and especially, the females, because, watching her and her being such a role model for girls, like I just hope that girls really see that being strong is great. We don't want to just be thin. We want to be strong. And so, his word of mouth has really just carried my business because as far as marketing goes and as far as advertisement and all that stuff, I'm very bad at it. And, I will give as much knowledge as mine as I can to anyone if they just talk to me. And so, that doesn't do well for my business, but it is at the same time, it's, I'll take less just to make sure to try to help out as many people as I can.
I'm going to make you blush, Val, because I really do think you're a role model for especially the girls at the gym and the girls at our school. It comes through. It really does. And I know you teach the kids class and then you do a separate women's class. Can you talk a little about the women's class that you do at jiu-jitsu that anybody can come, even if they're not a member of the gym, and why you started doing that?
Yeah, so I teach a women's class at our 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu studio, and I started it because, one, I just noticed that our nighttime class is it's sweaty, gross boys, it's a little intimidating. Yeah, a lot of competitors. It's a very intense room. But I know a lot of women who wanted to start doing jujitsu, and same thing with weightlifting. They're just so intimidated to come into a gym to start it, especially at least with weightlifting, you can maybe bring a friend and you guys can be in your own area. But in jujitsu, you're thrown in with people. So especially if it's a room full of boys, you get a little awkward or intimidated. So I started the women's class because I just wanted to give them a space to feel like they had a class for themselves. They were comfortable to come in. And, my goal is to hopefully get the women who are in my women's class, if they can, and they feel comfortable, into the normal gym classes so that they feel confident going in there. And then, yeah, I'm just a huge a supporter of just women, little girls in jiu-jitsu, in martial arts. I think it's so beneficial for them, like with their confidence, with obviously like protecting themselves, but it just like kind of teaches them how powerful they are and how they can be so much better than boys.
We have a girl that works out at the gym who's, I think she's 12 or 13. You'll know who I'm talking about, but I won't use her name. And her dad has told her like, hey, as soon as you can beat up one of the boys your size, you're allowed to go on dates. Because I need to know when I send you in the car with some kid that I don't know, that you can like defend yourself physically, that you have the confidence. And so what have you seen with women that get into jiu-jitsu as far as whether it's strength, confidence, maybe how it affects other parts of their life?
Yeah, definitely. And like, that's like a great point you brought in too, is everyone thinks jiu-jitsu, and whenever I do self-defense seminars, everyone thinks it's for the stranger in the dark alley when you're walking to your car. And that's a very low percentage of the people who are attacking you. Unfortunately, it's when you're stuck in a car with someone you're on a date with, when you're, in your college dorm room and you're already in a situation. And so like, that's a big thing that I think women slowly start to realize is like why they should start training is it's not just avoiding the dark alleys. It's not staying in the sunlight. A lot of times like you need it because you're already in close quarters with someone. And it's just really cool because, again, they don't think they're able to like fight against someone. Again, I'm small and I'm not saying I could probably beat you up if we actually got in like a real physical fight because you're a bigger guy than me.
I don't know. You've choked me out. You've choked me almost unconscious a few times. Like maybe if I could punch you, it'd be different, but like you could definitely fend for yourself.
And that's it, is like I think that's a big misconception with self-defense with jiu-jitsu too, is like, yeah, if I can choke you out, we're both in a jiu-jitsu exchange, choking you out is very possible. If this was a real life like situation, me being able to fend you off to fight for my life for a couple of minutes, seconds is like a big game changer. And I think that's like a big thing they realize too, is like, oh, like if I can be trouble, that's huge for me.
Yeah.
And then
because weak men that are going to attack a girl, they don't want somebody who's going to fight back. They just want to attack, like they want to attack victims, right?
Exactly.
And so if even my daughter or somebody your size or whatnot can fight back just for a few seconds, that might be enough to make them think twice about it, right?
Exactly. And that's what we tell women all the time is like, we have the different responses: fight, flight, freeze, and appeasement. And if you can slowly start practicing getting out of your response and, like, again, I'm going to teach you 20 different moves in our jiu-jitsu time together. You don't have to remember any of them. But if you remember to move, fight, kick, do something, not freeze up, fight whatever it is that your reaction is, like, that's all I want from you. Yeah. I also think, it's really funny because, they come in, they're really scared when they're first drilling. Women are like really dainty with each other. And then when it's time to go live, oh man, the first like 20 seconds in, they're wrestling, they're going with each other. And I don't think like a lot of us women, girls, we get to do that as kids.
Right.
Boys, you guys see a mat, you guys see an open space. It doesn't matter where you are. They wrestle, they mess around with each other. But girls, like, we don't get to do that. So to like also let out that like primal energy is really fun.
Again, when it comes to kids, up until puberty, if a girl and a boy have been training the same time, girls are most likely going to come out on top because they're more puberty yells are killers. They're vicious. Yeah, they're vicious.
I think Alina's done great in all her tournaments when she goes against boys, right? Almost better than when she goes against girls.
Alina in tournaments has beat more boys than girls. Yeah. Because the girls are a little bit more technical. Yeah. And the boys will try to bully her. And then as soon as they know she's going to fight back, she just crushes them. Yeah. At the last tournament, she made a little boy cry, which to me, in the sport of it, I was like, oh, I don't want to see a boy cry. And at the same time, inside, I was like, yes, I know that kid. Like you're a little girl that can make a little boy cry. I love this.
No, again, yeah, up until puberty, like if it's a girl versus boy, I was like, I'll take the girl 9 times out of 10. I bet you they're going to win. I don't need to know anything else. Yeah. That's
also why women's class is my favorite. Getting to teach women compared to men. And again, it could be because I'm a woman, I could get seen different, but I can go through so many details with the women's class that I can't when I teach like adult men.
Oh yeah, guys don't pay attention. They're like, I just want to crush people. Where women will actually pay attention to the deal. Yeah,
right, 100%.
It would be unfair if I glossed over it because you kind of just said it as like, oh hey, this is part of my life. You struggled with bulimia for 3 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
And how did you work through that? Was this fitness journey part of it, or?
Yeah, it was a big part of it. I kind of like mentioned earlier, I stopped first thing I did was I stopped looking at the scale. I didn't weigh myself for quite a few months, maybe close to a year, as I was like going through this, unless it was for specifically cutting weights for fights or anything. And then I just started like really like, it's so cheesy, but like I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, okay, what is it that I want to change about my body? Let's not focus on like the number. Let's not focus on, whatever it is. What is it I want to change about it? What do I want to see to make me happy with my body? And also like, I need to make sure I'm not screwing myself over for the future. Like I did, I was in college and I was a child development major. And one of the things we had to do was do research on eating disorders because teenage girls develop eating disorders a lot. And I was like, oh, this is really, like awkward. Yeah. And I get stuck with anorexia, but they talked about both. And then I saw a bunch of like pictures and videos of women who had been bulimic, anorexic for a lot of their lives and like how much damage they did to their bodies. Teeth falling out, your fingers, the skin on your fingers start to die if you're constantly making yourself throw up because of the acid in your stomach. Like you're literally like taking away muscle. Their bones were breaking. They're in hospitals with IVs, and I was like, oh, I'm trying to be an athlete. And like, that's what I'm setting myself up for. That's not what I want to see when I look in the mirror. Like, I'm just so stuck on this like scale, this number for some reason. Like, why? And so then, I started to look at my body as like, I need to take care of it. It's like a machine for me. I have things I want it to do. And so I need to fuel it that way. And like, he was a big help. He was a huge help with forcing me to eat, like awkward enough. Like I would eat a big meal and instead of like letting me sneak away, he'd be like, all right, you're going to sit here with me. We're going to wait till your food digests and you're not allowed to like, kind of go away. And like, but it helped. I started eating food. I started realizing I was craving food. I didn't realize how much my body like wanted to eat meals and like it was awesome.
Yeah, which is crazy considering that like half of America is obese and that was your experience. Because I'm going to ask this of you, Ryan, because Val has these tendencies to like overdo it. Has it gone the other way at times where it's like, hey, lady, you got to, because you're her jiu-jitsu coach and her weightlifting coach and her dietitian, and you guys are like working in this together and you're such a great partnership. Do you ever have to back her off a training of like, hey, maybe the addiction's going a little too far the other way?
All the time. Yeah. Yeah, no. And this is just from a personal, because when I was training a lot more and we would train a lot together, putting in 6 to 8 hours a day training wasn't a big deal. And so I know what that felt like and what redlining feels like and what your body is when it's shutting down basically and doing too much. And so I know that when I can recognize the signs. And so since I'm not in there, I can physically pull her away. I'm just as stubborn as she is when it comes to that stuff. So if I was still going, we would both be running into these problems. But luckily, I took a step back, which can allow me now to take a step back for her. But yeah, when it comes down to that stuff, just the same thing with her food. If she's not getting enough food, her body's just going to start shutting down. And it's because you're just doing too much work and your body, and you're burning out muscle. You're just going to shut down and get sick. And it comes along the same lines. You can overdo things just like you can underdo things. As Americans, we're underdoing our activity and overdoing our overconsumption. Sometimes she just overdoes her activity, which in turn, just like with kids, doesn't allow for enough consumption. If she was able to eat enough calories in her day, she can train 3 or 4 times a day because her body is going to be able to bounce back, have enough food, we recover good enough for her. But it's the time in between practices isn't enough time for her to eat. And so she doesn't get enough calories. When she doesn't get enough calories, then we run into problems. Yeah. So that's what the things you have to realize. And it comes along the same line for when people want to lose weight. Their first reaction is to cut calories. And I go, let's just try to move more because everyone says my metabolism is broken. Your metabolism is not broken. We're just not moving. The more you move, the more you burn. And so I'm not telling you to go run a mile or go run a marathon. I'm just telling you to park farther away from the supermarket and go walk that far. Those little steps make a difference. The more we move, just like her, the more she moves, the less time she has to eat. The less time you have to eat, the less calories you consume. And so it just all comes hand in hand. If we just move more, just like kids, we eat less. Our jobs sitting around behind a desk. As soon as I sit behind a desk, I immediately start to get snacky. And like, I again have the luxury of what I do as a profession is I'm even when I'm like training people, I'm still, drinking a protein shake or like snacking on food, but like it's not as bad. As soon as I sit behind the desk to do the work that I have to do, all of a sudden I'm just starting to eat without realizing it. And that's what I'm sure can happen to when you're behind the desk 8 hours a day. I'm behind the desk 1 to 2 and I'm snacking. So
writing your newsletter is not good for your calorie reserve.
Exactly.
I get your like daily or every other day newsletter. It's really good. It's not like salesy. It's like, oh, this was a good tip. This is a fitness. What's the newsletter, by the way, if people want to sign up, and we'll make sure we put that in the show notes.
It's just on my website. It's the blog that I do every day. New Era Fitness and Performance.com.
Okay.
Yeah, just the blog entry about once every other day or something like that, or every day. Just little things that just go into, we don't want, again, the best thing you said is paralysis by analysis. I'm not trying to throw a bunch at you guys. There's 10,000 diets out there, but the thing is, it's not a one size fit all thing. Biggest thing we have to figure out is what I call is your Achilles heel. For me and her, it's candy. We have to have candy in our diet. The more we say no, the more we're going to fall off. And that's what happens a lot of times for people. So when I meet with people, same thing with you. I go, what's our one thing that we just can't say no to?
Dr. Pepper.
Exactly. Because if we keep saying no to it, we're eventually going to fall off. And so for a lot of my clients, it's alcohol. And so I was like, we can have alcohol while we're still cutting. That's fine. As long as you just do everything else right, we don't need to be perfect. We're not trying to be, we're humans, it's 80. My goal for you is 80-20. 80%, we're doing great. 20%, I don't really care what you do. Just don't go over the top with everything. Moderation is the key word in that stuff. But, when it comes down to anything, you can overwork yourself with work, with activity, and you can underwork yourself with activity, obviously, as we're doing,
It's crazy. One of the big tips that you gave me was like, because I eat on the road a lot, and then I'll eat out these very rich, high calorie meals with some rolls and a couple alcoholic beverages. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I ate like 2,000 calories at dinner. I don't even know how I did that. And you gave me the tip. You're like, hey man, when you're on the road, just have a cooler full of protein shakes and some healthy snacks, which has been a game changer for me. And then you're like, when you're about ready to go out for one of those business dinners where there's going to be drinking and there's going to be 5-course meal, just have a big protein shake before you go. So I've been doing that. And it's so funny, about 2 months ago, a bunch of my boys were in town for this big mortgage conference. I'm like, oh, this is the night we're going out. I'm going to get blasted drunk. We're going to eat all night. And then we're going to end up at some pizzeria at 4:00 in the morning. And I did that. I had like a giant protein shake before we went, and it's like all of a sudden the bread wasn't appealing, and maybe I had 2 or 3 cocktails instead of 9 or 10, and it's just like you're full. Like you can't put more shit on your body. It's been a great tip. So carry around a case of protein shakes wherever you're going. I want to finish on a couple ideas when it comes to business. What's been the most frustrating part, and what's been the most satisfying part of training people physically for both of you, besides yelling at my kids?
I think like maybe it's not the most frustrating, but I think it's like hard for both of us. I think this is what I get frustrated at Ryan for. Is like charging what you're worth, charging what the knowledge is worth. Because you're like, I understand it is very expensive, not very expensive, but is it expense to put in to your health and everything, or put your kids in sports, or to do private sessions. So I think it's hard for both of us to like charge people, because we just want to I just want to help you. I just want to teach you. Let me just teach you the things I know. And then that's also just like the most rewarding for me is like, I see a little kid, like they do their little jiu-jitsu move. They look at their parent. They're so proud of themselves. Or, kids putting hard work in for tournaments, getting ready for things. And then they go out there and like win or lose, they're just like, oh, I worked so hard for this. I'm so excited. And you're just like, oh, I'm proud of you. Like you had fun with the experience. Like this one.
I'll tell you, spending the money is worth it, that I found, because it's like that old saying, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I'm sure I screwed that up. But, now that I've been working out with you, it's like I feel a little bit better. So I eat a little bit less junk food. If I eat a little bit less junk food, I eat at home more. If I drink a protein shake, I'm probably spending $10 or $20 less than I would have every time I go out to eat, right? And so all of a sudden it's like, yes, I am paying you a few $100s a month to work out with you. And I have saved that money on the crap that I used to stop
Sure.
and eat fast food, or now when I go to Starbucks, I get an iced tea instead of an iced tea and a bagel. Or, when I go out to dinner, I'm like, wait a minute. Why was the sushi bill for my wife and I only $100 instead of $200? It's like, well, we didn't get this appetizer and we didn't drink this alcoholic beverage. And all of a sudden the money makes up for itself. So yes, I agree. You should charge what you're worth. But
it's really interesting, we're not parents yet ourselves, but almost all of my clients are. And you talk about everything that you do for your kids, the sports, the money you put in for the sports that they do, their education and stuff like that. And a lot of times I have to say, it's like, a lot of times you have to take care of yourself for your kids. Your kids need you around. As much as, you want to take care of them financially, making sure that they're taken care of. And I understand that. It's what happens if you're not around because you're not taking care of yourself.
yeah,
I lost my dad not too long ago. And I always tell people that I would have given up, a few hours away from him as a kid if I could still have him around now, because he got overweight, and caught, a disease and ended up dying early and young. And it's like, if you want to help your kids, they also need you around, And so if you can do anything for your kids, just be healthy, and be strong.
I try so hard not to judge, but I judge. Nothing to me feels more inauthentic than when we're at soccer or we're at jiu-jitsu, whatever, and we see a parent who I know is spending 15 or 20 grand a year on private lessons, traveling for tournaments, league, uniform, pouring all of their energy into their kids' health, which I really respect.
Sure.
And then they're like wildly obese. I'm like, no offense, man, but one, as a dad, you're not leading by example, and your kids are going to do what they see, not what you tell them. I can tell Gabriel to do jiu-jitsu 4 hours a day. If he doesn't see me going to jiu-jitsu, he's not going to do it. Like, that's how kids are.
Call you out.
Yeah. And then like, okay, great. So you got your kids' private soccer lessons when they were 12, but you're dead by the time they're 22.
100%.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
You're a fair line.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's, you want to do everything for your kids, and I totally appreciate that. But it's like, can you live for your kids, please? Like, can you do stuff to help your health? And the same line, like, I was just talking to a guy who, he's 31 years old, has debilitating lower back pain. He's like, this is his life for me, right? I go, absolutely not. Technically as men, 28 to 32 is our prime. You should be feeling the best you ever felt. And he goes, all I want to do is be able to walk upstairs and pick up my 7-year-old daughter. And he's like, I just can't do that right now because he's so overweight. And I go, that is 100% achievable. That is, that is the bare minimum you should be able to do. You would want to be able to spend your time with your kids. I got the benefit of my dad played sports with me when I was a kid. I can't imagine not having, just seeing him in the stands, just sitting there because he physically couldn't do it.
Right.
It is a big deal to, for as a parent to be able to play with your kids. So I couldn't imagine not being able to because of physical. It's one thing, things happen. I get it. But because you physically have put yourself in a position not to be able to, play and live for them.
So we've got women who want to be stronger. We've got women that want to overcome osteoporosis. We've got dads like me that waited like a moron until I was in my late 30s to have kids. So I have to stay physically fit so I can stay active with them. And then just for longevity, it sounds like you can pretty much cover everybody. So how do people get in touch with you?
You can just go on my website, newerafittestandperformance.com, is the best way to get a hold of me. Just send a message. But yeah, it's one of those things. I understand gyms, especially big gyms, are intimidating. And as you go to the gym, there's nothing more frustrating than not seeing progress. I've seen people show up at a gym for a year and look the exact same. And I get it. And I have a story of a guy who is the same. He does jiu-jitsu, and he tells me he does jiu-jitsu 6-7 sessions a week. He does cardio another 2 or 3 sessions a week, and he kind of lifts weights. And he has looked the exact same for 4 years. And he's like, I can't lose body weight. I was like, I train a quarter of the amount of you do. I lift weights 2 days on, 1 or 2 days off. And I go to jiu-jitsu a couple times a week at the best. I was like, and I don't do cardio unless I need to. And I go, what's wrong here? I go, I've changed and morphed my body because I've wanted to put on size. I was like, and you've looked the exact same. Something's wrong. I understand something is better than nothing, but you also have to look at it. If you're going to the gym and not seeing results, there's a problem, and the problem is what we're doing. And so, that's why I have a smaller studio for that reason. It's less intimidating. You don't have to worry about other people looking at you. And if you want to bring other people with you, because misery loves company. That's what that's allowed for, you know. Working out in groups is what I always recommend. And so majority of my people have, 2 to 3 people they work out with, because they can look at the other person and be like, is this tough? And they'll shake their head. Yeah, it's tough. They're cool. All right. I'm not the only one. Yeah, because there's nothing more frustrating like, oh, is this tough? Is someone I can't imagine, because I'm just standing there, so I don't look like anything's tough, of course, because I have to show you it's not tough,
Right.
But
We're really tough. Yeah. It's really easy to be an observer.
Exactly. And so I always tell people, have other people with you so that you can say, okay, this sucks, and they'll agree with you. This sucks. Like, all right, great. So we're doing it together. We suffer together, and we get better together, and you hold each other accountable. And, basically we can just be consistent, because the hardest thing and the frustrating thing I've seen is people, they're gung-ho 6 days a week, 2 weeks later, a month later, they're burnt out. It's like, guys, you don't need to go 6 days a week, just start with 2. We don't need to change your life. It's not going to unfortunately happen overnight or over a week. Give yourself, a couple weeks to a couple of months, because you didn't get here overnight. So give yourself a chance to get there. But we're creatures that don't like that. We want it right now.
Yeah, Amazon generation.
Exactly.
Click a button, get it out.
Exactly.
Val, leave us on why every parent should bring their young daughter to 10th Planet Kids class, or every mom should come to your Friday night women's only jiu-jitsu class, even if they've never done anything physical before in their life.
First thing is, it's going to be so much fun. Your kid's going to have so much fun. If you're a woman who's going to come to my jiu-jitsu class, you're going to have so much fun. It's just a good time. You're going to learn lots of life lessons, or whether it's just because things are hard and your kid has to push through it. But women need to learn jiu-jitsu. It is the best self-defense. It is the most useful in situations, so you won't regret it.
Perfect. That's what it is. Thanks, guys. Hey, it's Scott Groves with the Henderson HQ podcast. I hope you got something out of that episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to comment, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps the show grow. And by the way, if you are a business owner, or a business owner who has an interesting product, service, or just an interesting backstory, please get in touch with us. Email us at thehendersonhq@gmail.com. We would love to interview you, because that's what this show is all about. It's about building community, supporting local, individually owned businesses, and just making Henderson a great place to live. And don't forget, go to hendersonhq.com and make sure you sign up for our newsletter. We send out a once-a-week newsletter, no spam, about the most interesting local businesses, hotspots, restaurants, community events. Thanks for watching the show. Really appreciate you.